for 2 hours today, so actually we are in week 4 and the final week of this series called Selfless. And this week it is called Grateful in the Grind. So hopefully you'll get some meaning out of this today, because I think it affects so many of us. For so much of our lives, and I think we all tend to do this, we live under the illusion that there is something constantly just around the corner, right? And I don't know, I think of that and I just think of West Side Story, where in the beginning of it he sings a song where it's, could be, who knows, there's something new any day, I will know right away soon, anyway, which is a good point. So, I think that's how a lot of us live. There's something just right around the corner, right? Something around the corner that really, really matters. And when we get there, it's going to make all the difference in the world. And it's going to bring that fulfillment into our lives, which we crave constantly. It's not here right now, but it's just right there. You can almost put your fingers on it, right? That's what so many of us do. I can think of coming into ministry, and I remember sitting out there at one point in time and thinking, when I just get my first church job, that's when life is really going to start. That's when life is going to move out for me, right? And I got the first church job, and it was as a youth pastor. And, all right, so once I got that, I started thinking, once they assign me to a church, that's when things are really going to start. That's when life is really going to take off. So then they assigned me to a church, or 2 churches actually at the same time. And then that before long was, once I start my own church, that's when things are really going to get good, right? All right, so then you got that. Well, then once we get to 10 people in the church every weekend, that's when life is going to get good, right? Then it's, we got 10. Well, once we get to 20, that's when it's going to get good. And it keeps going. Once we're able to hire staff, that's when things are going to get good. Once we get our own building, that's when things are going to get good. So it just keeps going, escalating, escalating, and escalating. Constantly, we're looking around the corner for something better. You probably did it with your families. For those of you who are old enough, you're probably, eventually I'm going to meet that certain someone, that guy, that gal, and we're going to get married. And that's when life is going to start, right? Fast forward. Once we have our first kid, that's when life is going to start. That's when it's going to get good. Once the kid is out of diapers, that's when life is going to start. And now I'm starting to think, life is really going to start when we send these kids off to college and we can finally just get 1 pizza for me and Tracy and that'll be enough. Instead of 1 for us and 1 for Joey by himself.
Come on.
It's never quite enough, is it? We're always just looking down around the corner. And the problem is, what happens is we spend so many years of our lives wishing away the current season that we're in. We're constantly dreaming of the next thing, right? One day, just around the corner, it's going to be different, right? Something will happen, and it's just going to be more. There's going to be that something. There's going to be that achievement I make. There's going to be that relationship that I get into. There's going to be that possession that I finally get. There's going to be that special vacation I finally get to take. And when that happens, everything's going to be perfect, right? But it never is. It never changes anything, because around every corner, there's simply just another corner, right? Behind every corner, around every corner, is just another challenge. There's just another goal. There's just another dream. There's another perceived prize that we constantly chase, and we had these dreams, and you know what? This is what I enjoy. This is what I need to do. You know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to get mine, and I'm going to fulfill my dreams, right? And what we've been saying throughout this whole series, it's a culture thing, right? It's a culture thing where culture says, you did such a good job. Why don't you go gratify yourself? Why don't you do that? Why don't you indulge yourself? Oh, you know what? Why don't you treat yourself? You deserve it. Treat yourself, right? And that's what culture says. Jesus does not say that to us. That is not the message that Jesus says. Jesus says, hey, if you want to follow me, don't gratify yourself. Don't indulge yourself. Don't treat yourself. If you're going to follow me, you need to deny yourself. You need to take up your own cross and deny yourself. So we have this anchor verse that we're going to hang out today, and this is what we're going to focus on. So here it is, right here. Okay, anchor verse for the day. Whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. That's what we're focusing on. Okay, doing it for the glory of God, and no matter what we do, we're going to do it for the glory of God. The prize that we're seeking all the time, the prize isn't something that's out there, okay? It's not, the prize isn't out there. The prize is in what you accomplish occasionally. We think the prize is the raise, we think the prize is the promotion, the prize is the vacation. That's what we think. That's not the prize. The prize is in what you accomplish occasionally. The prize is in what you do daily. What you do for the glory of God. So I'm going to ask 3 questions. And these are what-if questions, okay? When it comes to the glory of God and what you do daily. What if the work is the reward? What if the prize is in the process? And what if you can be grateful in the grind? Okay, so let me say it one more time. What if the work is in the reward? What if the prize is in the process? What if you can be grateful in the grind? And by doing that, that means whatever we do for the glory of God. Okay? This is what Paul says to us. And this wouldn't all fit on one, so you'll have to go through that and then switch to the next, okay? He says, for I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church. Okay? In other words, I wasn't a good guy. Alright? I did bad things, and we know that he, went after Christians and he hunted them down. Okay? He says, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. Okay? Think about that. Before many of us accepted God, how many of us were all that good people? Probably not a lot of us. Many of us probably still aren't that great people. We're never going to be perfect. But he says, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace to me was not without effect. So God shows him grace, and it affects his life. It personally affects him in some way. Now there's some of us here that have had this experience where the grace of God has affected us in positive ways, and yet there's some of us probably that the grace of God has not yet affected us. We haven't fully accepted him into our lives, fully accepted him into our hearts. Okay? I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. Okay? Basically saying, I'm not enough. You are not enough. Okay? But his grace was enough. I worked harder than everybody else, but it's still by his grace that allowed me to get where I am. Okay? Those words, I worked harder than all of them. 7 words right there. I don't think we can even appreciate the depths of Paul's sacrifices that he made, what he went through, what he experienced. He's just saying, hey, as a matter of fact, this is how it was. You know, I'm not complaining. You know, he said, I'm not bragging. I'm just stating the truth here of what happened, okay? And imagine if you could just kind of sit down around the campfire with Paul and have a conversation with him. You know, he has his wine. You have whatever it is you drink. I don't know what that is. Ashley's yelling at me because I have a Monster up here today. So maybe he sits down with wine. I sit down with my Monster drink or something like that. And imagine just having that conversation with Paul and being like, Paul, what did you mean when you said you worked harder than all of them? What did you mean you worked harder than the rest? What did that mean? And he would probably say, back then, while everybody else, went to bed and while they were sleeping, I stayed awake. I stayed awake. And you know what? I got up early and I focused my time on God. When most people, when they were idolizing comfort in their lives, I accepted the fact that as a follower of Christ, that meant that probably things weren't going to be comfortable all the time for me. And you might experience that too as Christians. As followers of Christ, you might experience times in your life when it's not all that comfortable to be a follower of Christ, right? And he would probably say, why they idolize the comfort, I was being beaten, I was shipwrecked, I wasn't very crazy about that. I was even snake bitten and I'm afraid of snakes, I don't like them, and so that wasn't very much fun. And you know what, while others took shortcuts, not me. I stayed true to God day in and day out. I did the hard work that needed to be done. While other people were memorizing verses of the Bible and everything, I did that too, but I even took a step further and I wrote a lot of the things, right? While people were in prison, usually most people would be there and be like, oh, woe is me, not me. I continued to work for God while I was in prison. And I went to cities where there were no Christians, none at all. And I started churches and we planted those churches and we had more Christians and we brought more people to the faith. This is what he did. So Paul, he didn't say, you know what, I just keep looking for what's around the corner, right? He wasn't constantly wishing for the next season of his life. What he did was he made the most of the season that he was in. And we lack that sometimes. We don't make the most of the season of what we're in because we think the prize is around the corner. And Paul, I think, would tell you the prize is right in front of you. The prize is the season that you're in. The prize is being grateful in the grind. When he was in prison, Paul didn't say, you know what, I'm out. I'm done with this God thing. This isn't what I had planned. This isn't what I had in mind to be sitting in prison. I'm not doing anything in prison, right? When he was shipwrecked, he didn't say, forget God. You know what? This isn't my plan. This isn't what I wanted to do. No, God let me down because now I'm shipwrecked. He didn't do any of that. He said, no, you know what? I'm shipwrecked, but God is still with me. When Barnabas left him, he didn't say, oh, it's over. I'm just going to be bitter and mad and everything. No, he kept going. Whatever you do, like Paul, you do for the glory of God. And that might be in something like changing diapers. Who would have thought? Changing diapers. Whether you're at work and you're just making some simple sales calls. You're doing the laundry in the house. You're running errands for the boss. We do it all for the glory of God. Because maybe the work is the reward. Maybe the prize is in the process. And maybe we can be grateful in the grind. I'm going to give you 3 enemies of the true reward. The true reward that is for all of us. three enemies, okay? And the first one, the first enemy of the true reward is the pillow, okay? The pillow is the seduction of comfort, all right? Basically, when we say, you know what I need to be comfortable? You know what I need to be comfortable? Oh, this is simple. I just need a better house. Better house, I'll be comfortable, right? I need a better car. A better car is what I need to be comfortable. You remember, you guys all do because you guys aren't young, but old. You guys won't remember this, but remember having a car and put the window down, you had to do this. And put it back again. Right? And you thought, you know what? Well, if I could just get one of those cars where I could just go. And now, you got that car, and that's not even good enough, because now the cars, the window will go down just by going, big. You gotta do nothing, right? And what do you want? You want a new car. You want the next car. You want the better car, right? You know, you want to go on the next trip. You want the next vacation. You want the comfort. You know what? You don't just want to be you don't want to be just employed. You want to be the boss. You know, you want to be comfortable. You know what? I just want enough money to take life easy. Take it easy from now on. That's what I want. You know, I just a couple mil will do, and just so that I can take it easy, right? Well, guess what? God never called us to easy, all right? He never called us to easy, all right? He called us to deny ourselves. He did that, and that doesn't sound that easy, does it? He called us to take up our own cross, but he never said, well, here's easy, right? Because here's the thing about easy. We can think about Jesus. We can think about Paul. We can think about so many other people that changed the world, right? In some way, shape, or form. Easy never changed the world. That is not what God is calling us to. It's easy. The next thing that we get, that is the enemy of the true reward, is the shiny thing. All right? The allure of constant distractions. And you know how that works. You get your phone and all of a sudden, bing! Oh, I gotta look at my phone. Oh, look at that. Susie's showing me what she had for dinner tonight on Facebook. Because that's important. We need to know that. Right? You gotta know what Susie had for dinner. What if your dinner wasn't as good? It's competition. Right? What about Netflix? You get done watching your favorite show, and what does Netflix do? Netflix says you are 99% sure that you will like this show, so you gotta go watch that one now. Right? YouTube. Do you remember when YouTube, you finished watching a video, and if you wanted to watch another video, you had to search for another video? Not anymore. YouTube will just automatically play a video just like the one you just watched. Right? So, shiny things distracts us. We can't help it. You know what? It even runs down to our kids. Our 3-year-olds are so involved with everything now. Right? We overschedule 3-year-olds from one project to the next because, you know, we have to have the 3-year-old in the traveling soccer league because in case they want to go pro someday. Right? We're always comparing our 3-year-olds. Well, I don't know what's really appropriate for a 3-year-old to be able to say, but we'll say, well, my kid says 50 words now. Well, my kid says 50 and a half words, so my kid's better than your kid. Right? The lure of constant distractions, okay? Number 3, the third thing, which is an enemy of the true reward, is the towel. All right? The towel. The perpetual temptation to quit. How many of you feel tempted to quit? Don't raise your hand. Okay. Don't raise your hand. Well, you want to quit. We all want to quit at times. You know what? Marriage gets tough, right? Your relationship gets tough. It's getting difficult. I don't want to deal with it. We live in a society that says, well, get a divorce. It's not a big deal. Right? That's the society we live in now. No big deal. You know, that's one of my problems with doing marriages as a pastor anyways, is I think it's just not appreciated anymore. And I think so often the last resort becomes the first resort. Last resort would have been divorce. Now it's like, well, we disagree with something, so done with that. Right? You know what? It might be you've struggled with finances so far, for so long, it's just easier to say, I quit. I'm not paying any of those bills anymore. I'm not going to try to catch up. I'm just going to go get the new Xbox, PlayStation. I'm just going to blow my money on what I want, and everybody else just have to deal with it. We quit. Christianity, we love quitting that. We're great at quitting that. You know what? I went to church 2 times. I read my Bible one day. It didn't make a major difference in my life. I went to that church, and you know what? They just didn't appreciate me for who I was, even though I was only there once or twice and didn't really get a chance to know anybody. I'm not making that much of a difference if I don't go, right? You know what? This whole Christianity thing, I tried it. It's just too hard. Not going to do it, right? So, again, we quit. The towel, the perpetual temptation to quit. Here's the thing. You can throw in the towel if you want, or you can pick up the towel and use it to wipe the sweat off your face and keep going. The work is the reward. The prize is in the process. And we are to be grateful in the grind. Okay? So if you go to a graduation, and you listen to whoever's giving the speech at the graduation, what do they always say the same thing, right? They always say, as you go out into this world, make sure you follow your passion. All right? Follow your passion. You probably all had graduation speeches similar to follow your passion. Well, here's the tough thing for us to accept about passion. Passion doesn't always pay the bills. Passion doesn't keep the lights on, does it? Unfortunately. And the problem with the passion is passion usually has something to do with selfish passion, which becomes all about us, okay? And God's not calling us to selfish passion. God is calling us to selfless purpose. Selfless purpose is where God is calling us. Because here's the thing. I know it sounds weird to say. But once you recognize that you're serving God's purpose in your life, suddenly it's what you become passionate about. Once Tracy and I decided that we were going to start this church up, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We never knew about the sleepless nights. We never knew, that it was just going to wrap up our lives completely. And we never knew about the stresses that would be involved. But the one thing we knew is that we felt like we were serving God's purpose. Because we were serving God's purpose, it became our passion. This church became our passion because we felt this was what God's purpose for us was to start this church. So that purpose became passion. Think about Paul. Paul, I'm sure he had passion in his life before he started being the Paul that we know today, right? I mean, he had to have been passionate about something. Perhaps he was a singer, Perhaps he could pull out the electric guitar and play you riffs that you've never heard. Perhaps he was this great artist. He had passion in his paintings. If he was here in modern day, perhaps he would have been passionate about cars or something along those lines, right? Let me tell you what he wasn't passionate about probably at that time. He wasn't passionate about getting beaten and left for dead. Most of us aren't. But instead, of pursuing this selfish passion. He started to pursue God's purpose, and it became his passion. However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. It's not about me anymore. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me. The task of testifying to the good news of God's grace. He recognized it wasn't about him. That his life had purpose. By fulfilling and pursuing God's purpose for him, he would find passion in what he was doing. Purpose helps us feel passionate about ordinary things. So if you just have purpose in your life, you will start to feel passion about ordinary things in your life. Something mundane you'll feel passionate about. Something ordinary takes on new meaning when this happens, right? Whatever we do, no matter how small or boring or insignificant it is, we do it for the glory of God, which gives us purpose and passion. And that can be the simplest of things. If you made someone coffee perhaps this morning, you found passion in that. There's something about doing the simplest things like that. If you've prayed over a 2-year-old who needed that, there was purpose and passion there for you. If you lead a group of youth, God be with you, but may you find purpose and passion in doing that. If you've opened your home to people needing just to connect in a safe environment, hopefully you find purpose and passion in doing that. Purpose, passion to glorify God. And Paul gives us some images of what this is in Corinthians. He tells us, he says, don't run like someone running aimlessly. If you can imagine what running aimlessly is. More in circles or something. If you can imagine that, he says, we're not shadow boxing. He says, if you're going to run, you run with purpose in every step you take. Run with purpose. Same thing with us. Follow your purpose with passion. Make your passion purpose. You go towards it with purpose. Whatever you do, whether it's driving the kids all over town, whether you're prepping for college, whether you're fighting for your marriage, you do it with purpose. Whether you're loving your spouse because you're having issues conceiving, purpose and passion in that. Whether you're caring for aging parents, you do it with purpose and you do it with passion. Whether you feel called to do something even more. God calls all of us sometimes to do just a little bit more. Whether you're stuck in that job that you don't love and it's not really making you feel all warm and bubbly inside, we do it for His glory. We do it for His purpose. We do it with passion. When we're dealing with crushing disappointment, right? We don't lose sight of what God is asking us to do everything for His glory. Purpose, passion. When we're paying down that debt, purpose and passion, all for His glory. The prize is not when you get the promotion. It's not when you get the raise. It's not when you get the new car. It's not when you go on the fancy vacation. It's not, eventually I'm going to get discovered, then I'm going to make the big bucks, and everybody's going to know who I am. Prize is now in whatever it is you do. not a day from now. It's not a week from now. It's not a month from now. It's not a year from now. That is not prize. Prize is in today. Because this is the day the Lord has made for you. Find purpose in that. Find passion in that. Life is not about me. As much as I would like it to be, it's not about me. And you and I have to deny ourselves daily if we're going to be followers of Christ. And that is what we've talked about in this series. Week 1, we said we're going to be bold in spirit. We're going to speak boldly, and we're going to believe deeply. Week number 2, we said we're going to be faithful in service. That serving isn't what we do, but servants is who we are. Last week we said we were going to be extravagant in generosity. That means we were going to give more of ourselves, more of our time, more of our money where we can. We weren't going to hold back. We were going to lead the way. And this week we're going to be grateful in the grind. We're going to be grateful in whatever it is God puts before us. We're going to be grateful in the grind, and we're going to follow it with passion, and we're going to follow God with purpose, and we will do the work that He calls us to do, because the work is the reward. The prize is in the process, and we will be grateful in the bride. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone here today. And I pray, God, that we all feel your effect in our lives. God, I know that perhaps there are those of us today who haven't made that leap of just giving our lives over to you, that we haven't surrendered our hearts to you. And God, I'm just praying that if there are those of us here today that we decide that today is the day that we follow your purpose in our life, and that we follow passion that you will give us, and that we take our hearts and our lives and we hand them over to you, and that we accept your grace and your love that comes to us. God, help us all to go into this week as your representatives. Help us to show light, love, and grace to everyone we come across. And God, be with us today and every day until we meet here again next week, where we celebrate the resurrection of your Son. We ask all these things in Jesus Christ's name.